So my mom is from South Korea, and she is the typical Korean lady. She's petite, much like myself. She has a slight accent. She speaks really loud on the cell phone, and she, most importantly, she owns her home business. And if you're thinking, oh, it must be a dry cleaner, well, then you're a racist. Not all Koreans own dry cleaners. No, my mom owns a deli, which is the other Korean stereotype, so you can go ahead. So there was this time when my mom and I were going discount shopping, and she's telling me this story, and I'm thinking, this is giving me so much insight into how my siblings and I were raised. So my grandfather owned a farm in a small town in Korea, and this is where my mom grew up. And it was a very important source of food for the town. There was meats, vegetables, eggs, grains, you name it. He was like the Johnny Appleseed of this small town, the Jung Kimchi seed, if you want. So people would come to the farm and they would, oh, I guess that was a good one. So people would come to the town and either trade or buy stuff. My mom likes to say that it was because they would come to check her out because she was hot, much like myself. And and I find that a little hypocritical because as many times as she told me how hot she was and how many men she dated in high school, I was never allowed to date. And if she had it her way, I would still be living at home and still never been kissed. I guess my mom kind of sort of has it still her way. I might be living at home still. So a little bit more about my mom, or Oma as she is lovingly called. She is the oldest of 5 children, and none of them are really close to her in age. So her closest friends were the family pets, and that's rather unfortunate because she didn't have a very good track record with pets. See, this one time when the family got a puppy, they were all just really excited. They decided they were going to cuddle with the puppy. They were going to take turns every night cuddling with the puppy. On Oma's turn, she was just so excited she could hardly sleep, which probably the puppy would have preferred. See, Oma fell asleep and actually rolled over, and that was the end of the family pet. But don't worry, they didn't eat him. Racist, I know. So not having gotten over the Michael Vick-esque episode, she decided that she was a little hesitant about having another pet until she realized that their ducks had roosted in the family barn. And suspiciously, the mother and father ducks ran away, as my grandfather said. Not wanting these eggs to be abandoned, she decided she was going to adopt them. So she got blankets and some light, trying to incubate it as best as she could, because she's Asian, so clearly she's smart. And so when the eggs finally hatched, Oma was the first one that they saw. She told me that every morning before school, she would feed them. And she's telling me that she would put the food in her mouth, chew it up, and then put it in the beaks. And as she's telling me this, I'm like, this is where the odd practice from my own upbringing came from. See, she used to do that with my siblings and I. She used to take McDonald's chicken nuggets and chew them up and then put them in each of our mouths. I mean, if I'm old enough to remember such a vivid memory, I'm pretty sure I was old enough to eat on my own. So after school, she would come home, and she taught them how to come to her by a call. She would say, "Ori, ori, ori," and they would come waddling to her. When they would go to the lake, they would waddle behind her, and they would take turns jumping in, and they would swim for hours. I'm a second-grade teacher, and I can tell you my kids have been in school for 3 years now, and they still don't know how to do this. My mom taught ducklings how to do it within a matter of weeks. Amazing, right? So one day, she comes home. She's following her normal routine. She goes inside, says hello to her mom and her dad. And then she goes to the barn to meet her friends. They're not there. So she's like, oh, it's a hot day. Let me go to the lake. Maybe they went for a swim. They're waiting for me. They're not there. Ori, ori, ori. She calls. No one comes. She goes to the cornfield. Not there. She goes behind the house. Ori, ori, ori. Still, no ducks are coming. So, panicking, she runs inside and she asks her mom and dad, 어머니, 아버지, 나 어디 갔어? If you're not lucky enough to have a Korean person sitting next to you to translate, I'll go ahead and say it for you. Mom, Dad, where are my ducks? Finally, my grandfather chimes in. 나 몰라. 다른 데 갔어. I'm not sure why he sounds like DMX, but he says, I don't know, I haven't seen them today. And then my grandmother, in her calm voice, she still has a calm voice, she says, 그거 어린은 다른 데 찾아서 그거 다른 오리 같이 우리 집에 안 좋아했었어, which means they must have gone somewhere else like the other ducks. They didn't like it here. So out of rage and betrayal, and clearly forgetting that yelling at your Korean parents in any capacity is grounds for disownment, she yells, I saw them this morning. They wouldn't just leave me. They're my best friends. And she storms up the stairs. She tells me that she falls onto her bed. And Korean beds, BTW, are 2 blankets under on top of a heating pad, so I'm sure it hurt like hell when she fell. And then she tells me that she starts crying hysterically. And I don't think I've ever seen my mother cry, so I'm thinking, what? So I really have to imagine this, because up until this point, I've just assumed that Korean women have their tear ducts removed upon the birth of their first child. So she continues, and she says, finally, my mom calls me down for dinner. And I'm still sad, and I go, and I sit down, and I reluctantly lift up my chopsticks, because I decide I need some sustenance to continue this duck search. She pauses and examines her plate of sliced meat, and then she looks at the carcass of the roasted fowl sitting in the middle of the table. Not only did her family have duck that night for dinner, but half the town did as well. And to rub more salt in her wounds, the following week, they would all stop by and compliment her on her father's duck. She hasn't touched duck since.